Was already reaching for my jacket when my brother-in-law touched my arm and said quietly, "Don't go yet." That was all. 2 words. But the way he said them, not like a request, more like a warning, made me stop. My father was still standing at the other end of the reception hall. His face was red the way it gets when he's made a decision and expects everyone to fall in line. He hadn't looked at me since he'd walked over and told me, in a voice low enough that the string quartet covered most of it, that I should leave, that I was embarrassing the family by being there, that no one had expected me to show up and no one was particularly glad I had. I'd said I wouldn't cause a scene. He'd said that was already more than he believed. That was 3 minutes ago. I want to explain something before I go further, because I know how this sounds. I know it sounds like one of those stories where the father is a cartoon villain and the daughter is a saint, and the truth is messier than that. My father is not a bad man. He worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood. He coached my brother's Little League team every spring even when he was exhausted. He cried at my grandmother's funeral in a way I'd never seen him cry before, and probably never will again. But there is a version of his daughter that lives in his head, and it is not me. It has never been me. The version in his head went to law school like he wanted, or stayed closer to home, or called more, or explained herself better, earlier, before it was too late, and the silence had calcified into something neither of us knew how to break. The version in his head did not, at 22, tell him she was leaving for officer candidate school and then spend the next decade saying very little about where she was or what she was doing, not because she was ashamed, because she didn't know how to make him understand a life that looked nothing like anything he'd planned for her. So we'd reached a détente. Not peace, détente. I showed up at Christmas. He was civil. I didn't talk about work. He didn't ask. We moved around each other like furniture we both agreed to keep, even though neither of us liked it anymore. My sister's wedding was supposed to be neutral ground. That was my mistake. I thought that because the day was about her, my father and I could simply not be about anything. Her name is Lena. She is 4 years younger than me and the only person in my family who ever really tried to understand what my life looked like. She sent me care packages when I was deployed the first time, real ones, with the specific brand of coffee I'd mentioned once in a phone call 3 months earlier, and a card that said, "I don't know where you are, but I hope the weather is okay." That card lived in the front pocket of my kit bag for 6 months. When she called to tell me about the engagement, I was sitting in a parking lot in Norfolk, eating a gas station sandwich because I'd worked through lunch. I remember thinking that whoever this man was, he better be exactly what she deserved. She read me some of his texts on the phone, laughing, and I thought, okay, he might be. His name is Damon. He grew up in Georgia. He teaches 8th grade history and coaches the school's mock trial team. He proposed to her at her parents' kitchen table, my parents' kitchen table, with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, because he wanted to ask in a place that meant something to her. I liked him immediately and sight unseen. What Damon didn't know when we finally met at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding was that I'd been trying for 10 minutes to figure out how to introduce myself without making things awkward. My family had a habit of describing me as between jobs to people who asked, which I'd learned years ago and simply stopped correcting. So I walked up to him and said, "I'm Lena's sister. I've heard good things." He shook my hand and said, "She talks about you all the time. She's really proud of you." I didn't know what to say to that. I said, "She's easy to be proud of." He smiled. And then something shifted in his expression, just slightly. He looked at me for a moment like he was recalibrating something. "What branch?" he said. I blinked. "Navy," I said. "How did you—" "The way you shook my hand," he said. "And you've been standing at parade rest for the last 4 minutes without noticing." I looked down at my own hands clasped behind my back and laughed despite myself. "Damon was ROTC, Lena said, appearing at his elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Army, don't let him make you talk shop all night." "I won't," he said, taking one of the glasses. but he looked at me with an expression I recognized, the particular look of someone who has served and is quietly doing math in their head. I didn't think much of it then. The rehearsal dinner was lovely. My mother cried twice. My father gave a toast that was warm and generous, and entirely avoided any direct mention of me, which I recognized as his version of a peace offering. I sat next to one of Lena's college friends and talked about nothing important for 2 hours, and it was, honestly, fine. The wedding was at an old estate outside Charlottesville. The kind of place with white columns and oak trees and a lawn that rolled down toward a pond. It was a Saturday in October, and the light was doing that thing it does in fall, where everything looks slightly golden, slightly borrowed. I wore the dress Lena had asked me to wear, the same dusty blue as the other bridesmaids. I did not wear anything that would signal anything. I had learned a long time ago how to make myself small in family contexts. It was not something I was proud of exactly. It was just something I had learned. The ceremony was beautiful. Lena cried. Damon cried. The officiant told a story about the two of them that was actually funny, which is rarer than it should be at weddings. I stood in the row of bridesmaids and thought about how strange it was to feel this proud and this outside a thing at the same time. The reception was in a tented pavilion on the lawn. There was a band and a roll bar and a seating chart that had placed me at a table near the back, which I suspected was intentional and had decided to take as a gift rather than an insult. I was at the bar getting a glass of water when my father found me. He didn't come over like he was looking for a conversation. He came over like he'd made a decision. "You should think about heading out," he said. "Early, before dinner." I turned to look at him. "It's Lena's wedding. I know what it is." His voice was quiet. The bartender had moved to the other end of the bar. "People have been asking about you, asking who you are. It draws attention. It's not what this day needs. I'm her sister. You're not." He stopped, started again. "You've been gone for 10 years. You show up for a weekend and then you're gone again. You don't call. You don't explain yourself. You just appear. And then people ask questions I don't know how to answer." "You could tell them the truth," I said. "I don't know what the truth is," he said. "That's the point." There was something in that sentence that landed differently than the rest, because he wasn't wrong. Not entirely. I had not told them the truth. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because every time I tried to find the words, I couldn't figure out how to make it make sense to people who measured success by zip code and title, and whether your name appeared in the local paper for something good. But I also knew, standing there, that I didn't have the energy to have the real conversation. Not today. Not at Lena's wedding, with a band playing Stevie Wonder 40 feet away. "I'll stay through dinner," I said. "Then I'll go." "I'd rather you went now," he said. "It would be cleaner." Cleaner. I turned that word over. "Okay," I said. I set my glass down. "Okay." I picked up my small bag from the chair at my table. I didn't want to make a scene. I did not want to be the thing that my father had always privately suspected I would be. The complication, the disruption, the daughter who made everything harder. I thought about Lena. I thought about the card she'd sent me. "I don't know where you are, but I hope the weather is okay." I thought about how she had asked me 3 times over the past year to please just come. "You don't have to fix anything with Dad. Just come." I was almost to the edge of the tent when Damon stepped in front of me. Not blocking me exactly. Just there. "Where are you going?" he said. "I think it's better if I head out." He looked at me, then looked past me toward where my father was standing. "Did someone ask you to leave?" His voice was even. That particular kind of even. "It's fine," I said. "It's not a big deal. Lena would want you here." "Damon, it's really okay, Commander," he said, quietly, not loudly enough for anyone else to hear, "just the two of us. standing at the edge of the tent with the oak trees behind me and the band starting a new song. I did some math last night. Lena said you've been Navy for 10 years. The ribbons on your dress uniform and that photo she showed me. The way you carry yourself. If I'm right about your rank, you should not be the one leaving this tent. I felt something move through me that I didn't entirely know how to name. You're not supposed to know that, I said. I'm a former Army captain who now teaches the Constitutional Convention to 13-year-olds, he said. I pay attention to things. He looked at me directly. Does your family know? I said nothing. Does your father know? He said. He knows I'm in the Navy. That's not what I asked. There was a long pause. The band shifted into something slower. No, I said. He doesn't know. Damon was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell them? This is the question everyone asks, always, and it's the right question, and I have never had a clean answer for it. I have thought about it for years. I have tried to explain it to friends and to therapists and to myself in journals I don't finish. What I've landed on is this. I didn't tell them because I tried once, early on, and my father had laughed. Not cruelly, just dismissively. He'd said, "You were always dramatic, sweetheart," and I understood then that in his framework, my ambitions were something to be gently managed, not taken seriously. And something in me decided quietly that I would rather he think I was failing than give him the chance to shrink what I was building. That is not a simple or sympathetic reason. I know that. It caused pain that didn't need to be caused. But it's the truth. I told Damon a version of it. Standing there at the edge of the tent in my bridesmaid dress with my jacket over my arm, he listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Okay, here's what I think. I think you should stay. I think your sister wants you here. And I think, at some point, probably not tonight, your father deserves to know who he's actually been talking to." That's not to shame him, he said quickly. Not to win. Just so he knows. People can't correct a wrong they don't know they've committed. I looked at him. My sister had chosen well. I'll stay, I said, but I don't want to make tonight about me. Then sit down and eat your salmon, he said. The salmon is excellent. I laughed. It came out shaky but real. I went back to my table. I ate the salmon, which was indeed excellent. I talked to the woman next to me, who turned out to be Damon's aunt from Savannah and had 17 strong opinions about azalea pruning, and it was the best conversation I had all night. At some point during the cake cutting, my father looked across the tent and found me. I saw the flicker of something cross his face. Surprise, maybe, that I was still there. Then his expression settled into something more complicated. He didn't come over. Not that night. But 3 days later, my phone rang. It was his number. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready. He left a message. It was 2 minutes long. I've listened to it more times than I can count. He said I did some asking around after the wedding. I talked to a man at the wedding. I talked to a man at the VFW who explained some things to me. I didn't know. I want you to understand that I didn't know and I should have, and the fact that I didn't is partly your doing and partly mine and probably mostly mine. I'm not good at this. Your mother says I never have been. I want to try to be better at it, if you're willing. A pause. The salmon was good, wasn't it? I called him back the next morning. We talked for 40 minutes. It was not easy. There were long silences. He asked questions I answered as honestly as I could, and there were answers he didn't like but sat with anyway, which is more than I expected. At the end he said, "I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago. I don't know why I didn't." I didn't say, "Because you didn't ask." Because you didn't ask. Because you decided what I was before I became it. Because I let you, I said, "It's okay, Dad." And then because it was true, I know you didn't know. We are not fixed. We are not the family we might have been. There are years between us that don't simply disappear because one phone call went better than expected. But there is something that wasn't there before. At Lena's first anniversary dinner, he introduced me to a neighbor he brought along. He said my name. He said my rank. He said it the way people say things they've been practicing, carefully, with the specific intention of getting it right. The neighbor shook my hand and said, "Thank you for your service." My father looked at me. He looked the way people look when they're realizing for the first time that they've been living next to something large without knowing it was there. I squeezed his arm once. He covered my hand with his. Neither of us said anything about it. We didn't have to.